Glory, glory, glory in the beat. Glory, glory, glory in the beat, in the beat, in the beat, in the beat, in the beat. Locked in with the great I am. Pressure, I'm a man. Sliding foes like Jerusalem.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Glory in the Beat podcast. I am your host for today, Gio, and today we have a very special guest for you. So, for anyone that doesn't know, there is a huge Christian music festival that takes place here in Ohio. And today we have the CEO of Alive Festival, Mr. Ken Ferguson, on with us. So, Ken, how you doing today?
Doing great today. Really excited for the conversation, and just honored to be on the podcast today. Thanks for having us in.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate you taking time out your schedule to chat with us and everything. So, the first thing we always do to start off our episode is kind of have our guests tell us a little bit about yourself. So, if you could go ahead and start with that, and then we'll keep the conversation rolling.
Yeah, definitely. Once again, Ken Ferguson from Alive Productions, and I always like to tell people I have what's probably the most interesting LinkedIn profile if you kind of follow social media, as far as kind of what I do and what we do. As you mentioned, Live Festival's been around roughly since 1988. And been in constant kind of operation since then. My wife and I, Susan, took over the company about three years ago, roughly. But the last 25 years have been a combination of different roles that kind of led to doing this, and that is an executive in the software industry, enterprise software industry, selling software to large organizations, and then was actually a worship pastor in my local church for a hot minute while I was doing that. And then, early in my life cycle, I was a professional musician kind of in this space. Yeah. And so what's the most logical thing somebody that does all those things should do? You should buy a music festival, buy a production company. So we jumped into that. My wife's actually a pharmacist, so that makes total logical sense as well. So we kind of jumped in entrepreneurially, like I said, about in 2022, as the Grainings, who had founded this festival back in 1988, were transitioning out into retirement, and we had been friends of the festival for years, and it was a natural fit for us personally, and all the things that we've experienced in our life, and just been a great last 3 years. Not just doing Alive, but many other big events here in Northeast Ohio and nationally. So, it's been a fun journey.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really cool. So you mentioned you were a worship pastor. Where was that at?
So a church down in the Canton area called High Mill Church, which we did that for roughly almost 15 years. Okay. Was a part of that congregation, and now serve at my local church in Canton as well. Still leading worship, but not the pastor necessarily at Woodlawn Church in Canton. So, I think it's super important, if you're a part of a local church to serve. And so no matter what capacity we've been in, in the work world, my wife and I have always been a part of that ministry, the worship ministry within our churches. And, now that, we're in the music industry, and, it's been I can relate to all the things that the artists are going through and the management's going through and all the things that they're trying to accomplish on their end. It really makes it really easy for us to kind of have empathy and sympathy when things go sideways, or you're trying to do some interesting stuff with them. You kind of know their world.
Yeah, that's really cool. So for anyone listening, especially outside of Ohio, who doesn't know about the Alive Festival, kind of what it is or anything like that, can you just kind of tell us about it from your perspective, kind of like how you've seen it grow, transform, kind of just what it is?
Yeah, most definitely. So, as I said on the front end, Alive's been around since 1988, which is crazy. When Bill and Kathy Graining, who live here in Northeast Ohio as well, founded the festival, there really wasn't anything like this, not just regionally, but there weren't a lot of national level festivals in the Christian world. And it has morphed and changed over the years, over the last 30 some years, 40, almost approaching 40 years, into kind of one of the premier festivals in the country. So a lot of people in our region don't really know. We get about 20,000 folks over the course of the 3 days that come out to the festival from all 50 states and about 6 to 7 countries, typically on a yearly basis, depending on where things land. I mean, a couple weeks ago, we got an order from Santiago, Chile, from Ireland, from the UK. So you get massive reach. It's a 3 day festival across multiple genres of modern music, from pop, hip hop, rock, CCM, worship, alternative, all the things, country. But what's unique about Alive is I want to say relevancy is our strength, but we kind of try things that no one else tries. We book bands that a lot of people don't book, and we really try and be thoughtful on crossover of just looking for people that, maybe how can we make the tent bigger, invite in more people from different walks of life and different types of music, and really just try and not just do the simple thing and go to mainstream Christian music and just pull in the top 10 groups in that genre, but we try and pull from bands that people haven't heard of before, artists that just don't get exposure. And what that has done for the festival is it's created a brand, in our opinion, that's unique. And that the industry tends to come to us and say, "Hey, we've got this new artist that's blowing up. Would you be interested?" And this happened to us, like a great example. I don't know if you're familiar with Josiah Queen, who's kind of a big deal these days. We booked him before he had a record deal. We booked him before anything else, and kind of believed in this young guy. And you fast forward 2 years, and he kind of blew up. And his first real big performance was at Alive last year. And it's just a great example of what we all should be doing, which is just not just doing an event where, like I said, it's the top 10, but people can come out for 3 days and experience all kinds of different music and be exposed to things that they maybe would never ever go to a concert, but get to see it, in real time. So, and it's a different experience. So what's unique about Alive, it's not just a bunch of concerts. It's at a park at Atwood Lake Park, which is in Mineral City. Beautiful state park with the ability to come camp. If you like to glamp, some super serious premium camping options. If you like to primitive camp, you can do that. Or you can commute in. And so we get people to come for the full 3 days. We get people to come in and commute in daily. And it just gives people flexibility to experience the food, the fun, the festival type things, as well as the music, in kind of one big package. And, we're growing where a lot of other festivals are shrinking. And I think it's just because it's very diverse.
Yeah, and that's something I really have grown to love and appreciate about the Alive Festival is, one, the diverse genres that are there, right? Like you mentioned, like there's something there for everybody.
100%.
Whatever you're into, you guys will have it, and that was something that I was very much enjoying the last couple of years that I've been. I'm just like, listening to artists I never heard of before, like you mentioned, bringing, people in that are starting to make some noise or might still be relatively unknown. Like one of my favorites was Mudhouse.
Yes.
Yeah, they were phenomenal. Like I hadn't heard of them until you guys announced that they would be there. So I went and Googled their music, and I was like, I really like this group. And I like them a lot. And it was really cool that they're from Ohio. So, yeah.
Exactly. A huge part of what we do, that I think has been a secret to success is we spend a lot of time in Spotify and YouTube and TikTok and places looking for the things that are those artists that are kind of hiding in plain sight. And we've been lucky to nail Mudhouse is one, Hopeful is one as well. That was kind of that shame kind of genre where nobody kind of knew these folks. They were from California, and we invited them to the festival, and they're kind of blowing up right now. I think they have just secured a record deal and whatnot. And one of their first major performances was with us last year. And that's fun. That's super fun from an entrepreneurial perspective to just help people get a voice,
Yeah, that's definitely something that we also, try to do here on our end with the radio station. We look for, one, the local guys, as well as the up-and-coming artists, guys that are good. They have talent. They just need more exposure and stuff. So I could definitely appreciate that mission. So you guys have been around, like you said, since 1988, which is a long time. That's
I was,
very,
for some context, I think I was in eighth grade going into high school, 1988. So, yeah, it's been a minute.
yeah, I wasn't even the thought yet.
Yeah,
I still had another 5 years before I made my grand entrance.
there you go. There you go.
Um, but so since then, though, the world has obviously changed a lot, right? And so I would imagine Alive has had to kind of evolve and change with it. So, what would kind of be like the single most guiding thing that you guys have kind of stayed with, stuck with, that guiding principle that has stuck around for decades that's kind of helped shape and mold you guys into what you are today?
Yeah, I think the guy, well, two things. One more, I'll say a missional thing, and then one that's more of, I'll call it a business thing that I think has made us successful. On the missional side, we never forget why we do it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's multiplicative across wherever you are in your faith journey. Is community, we believe community kind of trumps a lot of things. That good things. Anything good in your faith walk is going to happen in the midst of community. And Jesus talked about building the church, and that's all he really talked about as a mission. And so we just really put that out there, that we never leave the aspect of everything we do. We want to create community. So it's not just a bunch of shows or a bunch of music, but how can we do things that bring people together that maybe would never come together, that create what we refer to as kind of the Alive family. And you see that on site. You see lots of people who wouldn't naturally maybe hang,
Yeah.
that they'll hang at a festival, they'll get to meet some people they've never met before, and then they come back year on year, and you see the same core group of people that just have kind of committed themselves to this family and of people that really enjoy doing this together. And so that missional part of just creating a faith community and inviting people into the circle. So make it easy. Like we
Mm-hmm.
did Lauren Daigle a couple years ago, who was, the biggest artist we've probably ever booked. The Skillets, the Switchfoots, these people you find on regular, mainstream radio.
Yeah.
Need to Breathe is another example. And there's a set, I think you could maybe even throw in, Lecrae and some others from the hip hop side that cross over. By doing that, it's just it welcomes people. Striper, another one with they're a mainstream band that happens to be Christians, and so we do that missionally to try and really build bridges and create space where it's not just like a faith event, but it's a
Yeah.
crossover event where if you may not be a person of faith, but you appreciate the music, and so they come, and then you hope that maybe they get drawn closer in their walk by coming, and that has been a focus way before we took this thing over. But on a business front, man, we try and be not behind the curve, and I think a lot of faith-based music sometimes kind of trails like
Mm-hmm.
what's happening in the mainstream. We've tried to be on the front end of it, of like trying new things, doing new things, and being willing to take a risk on different types of music. And sometimes you get people like, I've never heard of these people before, and you get a
Yeah.
little bit of static from it on socials, like, why
Mm-hmm.
isn't this person coming? But yet these bands I've never heard of come, and then they come, and people go like, oh my gosh, like
That's
that
wild.
was really good. And then
Yeah.
they found, those things have kept us relevant, and I think have kept us ahead of the curve. And where, like I said, where others might be flat or shrinking in terms of their attendance or whatnot, we tend to, every year on year tend to grow. And I think it's because people feel like we're relevant. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to be where people are at or just ahead, and trying to make it just a unique experience for people.
Huh, that's great. Yeah, kind of just to circle back on what you said about people from different, pockets of life or backgrounds that might not normally mix, kind of reminds me of last year. When we got there, there was a guy that was getting out of his car with his wife, an older gentleman, had a slick back ponytail, a Striper shirt on. I'm like, who is Striper?
You're right, right.
And we get out, and I've got on, my T-shirt that has all these Christian hip hop artists on it, and we get to
Yep.
talking, and he was probably one of the sweetest and most genuine guys I had ever met. I can't remember the guy's name for the life of me. I gave him my card because we were supposed to go and get burgers, but I haven't heard from him. So if I see him again, I'm gonna let him know he owes me a burger.
Well, exactly. He owes you a burger, and you never know. Maybe maybe he dials into glory in the beat, and he
Hmm.
hears this, and now finds his card somewhere in his desk drawer and calls you back.
Right, some dust collected on it. But
Exactly.
yeah, it was a very beautiful moment though. I remember talking to my wife about that because I'm like, these are the moments that one, a common love for Jesus creates, and two, just a love for music, right? And then when you mix those two things together, especially when you do it in the way that you do it with all these diverse genres, like those are the types of experiences and encounters that you're creating, which can be very healing for people. I think, especially in the world that we're living in today. Like it's a beautiful thing.
We need to find more spaces where we're enjoying life together, enjoying walking with Christ together in a way that's not like one way. Like, okay, well, it makes sense if you're into just name your artist or name your type of music, or not even just music, but like name your thing.
Yeah.
And we tend to kind of get in one lane, and we can do that with Spotify, right? You can create your playlist that's just like you, and it's all about you, and it's all about Ken and what Ken likes. But there's something to be said for, and not just in the music world, but just I think we become a way better community of believers when we can kind of appreciate other people and
Hmm.
how God's made them and how they think about life. And we may not follow the same things. We may not vote the same way. We may not like the same food, man. You might be a protein guy and I might be a carb guy, but like we can all find that space. And we see it all the time. Like we'll see a lot of kind of older guests who come and they're there for some of the kind of the straight, hit, right down the middle poppy groups that sell
Yeah.
lots of tickets, and then they'll see a striper or they'll see a geo or somebody who's new or that's new on the scene, and you always get the same response. They're like, wow, man, I never in a million years thought I would have loved that. That was like my
Hmm.
favorite part. And they walk away with a new appreciation. And for people like that maybe follow that, they kind of, you might have a conversation in a parking lot like you had, right, where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I probably wouldn't run into this guy any place other than Walmart,
Yeah.
but a place like this, you have a cool conversation, get to know somebody in a different way and see the world from a different point of view. And just, yeah, I think God uses that. Like every year you
Hmm.
get stories like that of just like people that syncing up with people that never in a million years would have caught up with. It has nothing to do with the music. It has to do with people just, taking a minute and, spending time with people that aren't like them.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I appreciate, you guys creating that space for those things to happen. That's
For
very
sure.
central to our mission as well, on our side with just bringing people together from all different types of backgrounds and walks and stuff. Because at this point, hip hop is like a phenomena around the globe. And so we
Totally.
really try to leverage that to get people together under the same umbrella with hip hop and Jesus and just kind of seeing what God does with it. But yeah. So
Absolutely. We totally agree on that one. That's a huge part of our mission as well.
So, kind of switching gears a little bit. So, Alive is huge, right? And so, I would imagine throwing something like that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of hours. So, kind of like, what does a planning timeline look like? Like, are you guys like right back to the planning phase as soon as 1 year ends, or you guys take a little break and like kind of how far in advance are you like making plans and like figuring out what you want to do for the next year?
Yeah. Do you? So I assume you want the truth and nothing but the truth, and not the vinyl version. You want the real version. But yeah, I mean it's a 365 24/7 kind of a thing. Most people, they don't really understand how a music festival works. They're like, oh, how hard could this be? Three
Hmm.
stages, and you just kind of book the bands and they show up and you set up and you tear down. But essentially, what we have to do is build a city for 20,000 people, and we have to set it up in 2.5 days and tear it down in one. And the artist booking process, when you're doing like 40 to 50 bands across 3 days, um, is like the most complicated game of like Frogger, if you know the 80s video game,
Yeah.
or where you're just like trying to move all the pieces, or whack-a-mole, where you've
Hmm.
got 50 artists with schedules and tour routings and all the things. So we start. the festival will end July 19th on a Sunday, or a Saturday, I should say. We'll tear down Sunday, Monday, and then basically we have about a week to 2 weeks of settlement where we kind of figure out like all the vendors, make sure everybody kind of got what they needed to get back in return, got paid and all the things. And then August 1st it starts all over again. And we're usually planning even before that on like booking like the who, like what our strategy is. And that booking season really starts in August and doesn't really end until the spring. So our lineup wasn't set this year, which we were a little late because of just some complexities and tours and whatnot going on. We didn't get I don't think a final lineup till April. So it's a long season. And then the operations part usually starts sometime towards the end of the calendar year, and it pretty much runs. Now we're in what we call lifetime, that last 5-week push at the end where it's literally 16, 17 hours a day as you're working with electricians and touring managers and trying to figure out all the electric, figure out the production and all the semis are going to come in and all the things. So oddly enough, it's a all year thing. We get a little downtime in August where we take a week and just kind of chill out, but really you're right back into it. There's not really a stop to it. It's just a different part of the cycle.
Yeah.
But really heats up, January, February through the end of the cycle.
Okay.
And it's great. There's a lot to it. So think of it that way. There's the music part is actually the easy part. The hard part is the operations, just to make a very fun, safe, well organized, city that you build out in the woods, for 20,000 people. It's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely intense. Like, I think the first year I pulled up, I was like, this doesn't look like a camping ground.
No.
Like there are trees everywhere, but this doesn't look like a normal camping ground the way you guys
No,
do it.
we bring in. I mean, when we leave, it will look. It's squirrels and trees.
Hmm.
So there's nothing left out there but squirrels and trees in the lake. But when we roll in, we bring in Wi-Fi. So we actually put in, so that the vendors and the artists have internet to kind of run their shows, do their things. We bring in all the electric, the restroom facilities, which are pretty bougie and nice they're not just the typical
Yeah.
things you would see at a concert. Like most of them are air conditioned. There's showers. There's all kinds of things there to make it. I call it glamping. I know that's kind of the term most people use for it, but make it really, really a great experience for people to do that in the woods at a really rustic lake. It's a beautiful facility, but to make the lake functional for people, it's a lot, but it's totally worth it and so much fun. And it's great to see it transform, see all the tents roll in and all the production roll in, and it's a work of joy, even though it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I can only imagine. We threw a concert here in Akron last fall, and the amount of work that put into that with just some local guys and a headliner that was in Ohio. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot more than I ever thought it would
Yeah.
be. And that was just like at another local nonprofit, selling like $3 tickets and pizza and stuff. And I'm like, dude, I am exhausted. Like, so yeah, I can imagine just how tiring it is, especially in crunch time for you guys.
Yeah, we have a staff of we have a full-time staff of a handful of people. So and this is how Christian music works in general, but we've got a staff of about 5, counting myself, even though I'm not technically staff in that regard. And then we have a volunteer network of generally coordinators, 50 people that have given their lives to Live, and they come awake about March or April when we kind of turn on the operations, and they kind of just work at it with us, and they coordinate all the volunteers. And then there's usually about 200 to 300 volunteers depending on which festival year. They kind of operate the festival, and without them we couldn't do it. The economics wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So it's not just the 5 staff members, it's the 200 volunteers and the 50 coordinators that really make this thing go. And we're very well organized, and the 5 staff members kind of organize the rest of it. But you couldn't pull this off, any other way without that group of people that really see the missional value to it. And most of these people have been doing this for, a dozen or more years. It's just, they count it into their year, and, they call it the best week of summer.
Yeah, yeah. It's really, really cool. And like I've gone enough times now that I kind of start to recognize people's faces, like volunteers and stuff. And it's really neat just seeing how many volunteers are retained, like you said,
Yeah.
it kind of like becomes their lives, and like they really seem to enjoy what they're doing, and that's really, really neat to see, especially on like a volunteer basis. But so like, kind of going back like to like the booking process a little bit, kind of like what factors into your selecting of artists for that upcoming year? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, kind of like what's the most crucial to you guys when you're looking at what you're booking for the next year?
Yeah, so there's multiple layers to it. You obviously set a budget, so that's a huge part of it, of just what's feasible. And I won't go there; that freak people out. It's like a Rubik's cube of craziness to kind of figure out how to make it all work. But really the first place you start before you even go into how you economically put something like this together is you really want to reach, like, the whole goal here is not just to sell tickets. It's to really sell people on the experience, like that they're gonna experience, if they come for all 3 days, just a lot of things. And so what you're thinking through is, missionally, obviously they have to align to us missionally. So if somebody's got some crazy in their world, we're probably not going to be see eye to eye on that. But
Yeah.
you factor all that out, and you say, like, from an artist perspective, who is going to demographically reach a great group of people? And we look at that across multiple genres and say, and very directly we'll go right into, like, who's really hitting hard on social media, Spotify, radio, internet, really all the different channels we kind of take into consideration. Somebody might be super big on TikTok, online podcast world, where they're really killing it, but may not be strong on the radio. We still want those people included. We might go to the radio and say, like, traditional terrestrial radio, like, who's killing it there? We'll go into the up and coming world, and we just try and bring it all together into, like, okay, this year, prayerfully, we just feel like this is the group of artists that we really feel like could do a great job for us this year. And then that's our cut of it. And then you go to the artists, and you got to see who's got a tour going on. And so a lot of people think you just ask and they say yes. The reality is it's just the opposite, right? It's very hard to get all those things lined up, because you have to imagine, especially for the headliners, they're on tours, they have contracts, that preclude them from playing certain markets at certain times of the year based on the tour routing. So it's a huge Rubik's Cube to kind of get all that worked out together. But for us, we're 100% at the beginning of the cycle focused on experience. Like, what do we think is going to just hit everybody right where they live? Bring in as many people from different, parts of the community into the festival, and just get the best lineup we can get. So every year it's like, let's just get the, God, we believe God books the lineup to some extent. So we have our plans, he has different ones. And you see that every year. So if you follow, the lineups over the last, several years, there are some repeats in there for sure, but it's a lot of, because, there's only so much inventory in the Christian world anyways. But we really try and be missional about it. Just like, man, how can we reach a lot of people?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then from there, once you've kind of got that piece together, it's trying to create different experiences. This year, we've dialed into the next gen, end of the world, and we built an entire stage and an entire kind of lineup in the early part of the day, all 3 days, for our next gen village. And these are all up and coming artists. A lot of people in my age range wouldn't be able to find these people anywhere if we tried. But the young folk in the next gen space, they're like, oh yeah, these are our people, right? And that's just a great example of just doing some research and just figuring out what's on the cutting edge, what's hitting right now, and what do we believe in. And you kind of just roll that together, Gio. You put kind of a big bow on it and see what you can pull off. And by the end of the booking cycle, we might only be able to book half of what we planned. And that's generally how it works, right? And so, I ask a lot of guests and fans to give us the benefit of the doubt. This is super hard. And if we could have our dream line up and just get them to say yes, we do it every year. But that's just, it's not the way it works. And artists don't want to say no either, but they have lives too. And they got downtime where they're recording, they got downtime with their families, they've got tours they've got to run. And so all that's got to line up before you can even just get them to say yes and sign a contract.
Okay. So you mentioned the next gen stage briefly. Can you kind of talk about that and kind of how that came about and just kind of like what that's going to look like for this year?
Yeah, definitely. So basically the way we've structured the day, I'll back up for a second. A huge part of what we believe is we're in a unique time right now. The world is kind of definitely changing around us really fast. Mm-hmm. My wife and I have a heart in our staff. I always have for the next gen, and just always, our responsibility is to make on ramps, off ramps for them in all the things that we do, not just the festival, but like in life, like we should be always looking to bring these folks along. And one thing in the music industry is, there's a lot of young people in the music industry, but the music industry is actually pointed towards older demographic, right? And it's unfortunate. And so a lot of times because until those next gen artists kind of come through on the artist side and start to pay dividends, a lot of times they don't get the recognition, support, all those sorts of things. So you've got two dichotomies going on where there's this movement happening in the young people. You're seeing just an openness to faith and the things of the Lord that we haven't seen in a generation. And we want to lean into that. And then you see kind of how the music industry handles it, and they kind of wait for people to break before they give them a break. And so we just felt like the Lord had led us to just say, like, let's be the first. And if you look out into the music world, into the Christian music world, you don't really see what we're doing out there. It's a kind of a first kind of first mover kind of thing. Well, we're like, well, why wouldn't we create a space for young people where the people on the stage are their bands, these up and coming bands that their folks don't know about, or a lot of industry doesn't know about, some artists that maybe are getting ready to break. But more importantly, why wouldn't we focus these young people on next steps? So we're going to have a speaker down there, Tyshawn Rowland. He's a very well-known speaker. And Tyshawn is going to challenge these young people in the morning session to go to the next step in their walk with Christ. We're going to create an experience for them that's super, super fun and all geared towards them. It's all next gen. It's all the things that, kind of are relevant to them and cool to them. And then from our perspective, we're going to have partners down there in a tent that are going to help them with next steps, whether it's a college and they want to go a traditional route to, like, when they leave the festival, go back to a university like a Malone or a Liberty or a Grand Canyon University or some of the others that will be in attendance, or whether it's Federation of Christian Athletes where they can go start a huddle at their school with, or whether it's YWAM, Youth with a Mission, if they want to do mission work. We want these young people to leave the event and not be all puffed up and excited about what they just experienced and not do something with it. We want them to take something home and do something. So our whole goal is to create this environment where that can happen. And we want it to be super organic. We're not going to over-program it. Actually, if anything, we're kind of like, let's see how this goes, man. I have no idea how this is going to work. We're going to create this really great experience, and you just hope that they grab onto it. But what do we know about young people right now? Authenticity, and that's the key, to make it authentic and make it real and raw. And so we're going to go all in on this one. We're going to, throw a bunch of awesome artists set down. We're going to challenge them with a great speaker in Tyshawn Rowland, and we're going to hopefully have them walk away with something they can take home with them and go take a step towards their future and following Jesus. And hopefully they leave better than they got there.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. That's always super important, is just giving resources for people to follow up on, So, you go and you have this experience with Jesus and with others, and then you go home, you're kind of like, well, what now? Do I
Exactly
to a church or,
And what do you know? How many people have been to church camp or to a conference or whatever, and they leave all fired up, but if you don't give them, there's got to be some discipleship and next steps. So like there'll be church. We partner with a lot of regional churches and pastors, youth pastors. They're going to come in, and if you don't have a church, maybe you're new to the faith. Like they come to know Christ through the event, or maybe they've just not really leaned in and they don't have a local church. Somebody invited them. That what do we tell them to do? Get plugged into a local church. Doesn't matter which one. Just get plugged in and have something that you can do with what you've kind of picked up this week. So you've got all this excitement and energy. Where are you going to point it?
Yeah.
And just make sure they have a plan when they leave to the best extent that we can influence that. And God's going to take something from that, I think, and help people really walk away with hopefully a deeper faith and a deeper commitment to walking with Jesus. And if we can do even a portion of that in the 3 days that we have people on site, that's a win.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, it reminds me of we are doing these block parties this summer with the Akron Dream Center over in East Akron. And so they grill out food, they give away groceries, that type of thing, just really trying to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And we've partnered with them in the sense of bringing an artist to perform. So in the first block party we did around Easter, we did a giant Easter egg hunt, and we had this guy named Kello come down from Detroit and perform. And at the end of his set, he gave the gospel in just a very clear way, and led to a couple of handfuls of people giving their lives over to Jesus. And then I got home, and I was talking to my aunt about it, and she's like, well, did you give them next steps? And I'm kind of like, well, no, but they do have the Akron Dream Center, which is, how they came to that place, and they are very ministry focused, and I'm sure it would help them get plugged into, local churches and things like that. But it was a reminder of like, okay, so we give the gospel, but then what, right? Kind of
That's
like
right.
that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, we see a ton of people through the event, like usually, if not hundreds, definitely dozens. It depends on the year of people come to meet Jesus for the first time at the event. We baptize dozens of people, and that's great. And that is like huge. And, Kingdom of God wins on all that. But yeah, there's a part of like, what's the next, are you giving people something to take home with them after the experience? And both things are important, and both things can be right at the same time. So you can have this great experience in the moment, but then what do you do with it? And just helping people, guide them on both sides and making both things right at the same time is huge. And, yeah, it's that's the reason why we do a really killer job on the production and the music side. But on a conversation like this, as you can tell, I almost lean out of that part and lean into this part, because it's the part that actually matters, and what people really, whether they know it or not, need that. They need those experiences. We need to be out in community, rubbing shoulders with other believers, and also at the same time see life change in other people. And it's super awesome on the big screens to, thousands of people out on the lawn in the evening, and we deliver the gospel, in the middle of the main stage, experience, and see people running down to the tent, right? They always want life change, and maybe a friend invited them, maybe they just walked away from the Lord for a while and they're coming back, but we get to be a part of that. And that's the why, man. Like the concert's great, all that stuff's great, the festival's great, but to see people's lives impacted by that eternally is that keeps you coming back every year.
Absolutely. It's so encouraging. I remember that whole week that we did that was super tough, just a really tough week. And like kind of seeing all that transpire while we were there was like, oh, there's that encouragement that we needed, and like that assurance of just to keep going, and that, what we're doing matters and it's changing lives.
100%.
Yeah, that's great. So kind of switch gears a little bit just to kind of talk about Christian hip hop on a little bit of a
Yeah.
deeper level. So it's definitely seen a lot of growth over the last few years. So my question is kind of like, what has been your approach to kind of including and kind of mixing that into the festival, kind of like when that started? And like, have you seen that kind of impacting, the festival goers in any particular ways? Or
Yeah, it's a great question. I would like to say we're one of few that kind of understand the dynamic that's happening in hip hop right now. It's not the genre I'm most familiar. Like if I look at all the genres I'm familiar with, it's probably the one probably in the middle. You know, in terms of personally, like my understanding of maybe what's happening in the underground. But what's interesting is we're leaning into this space, and we actually breaking news here. We're trying to think of a way to do a festival that's really focused on hip hop. That's KB, I think one of the great artists in the space at the Dove Awards said like there's something happening like that's just like very bottoms up in that space. And what we've seen is that the mainstream world is embracing Christian hip hop versus what's always happened in Christian music is, we're like reaching out for validation in mainstream.
Yeah.
And, they will never validate us because, that's just not the way that works a lot of times. What's happening is the opposite is happening in hip hop. And you're seeing the mainstream validating the Christian artists and inviting them into the space. And the Miles Minnicks of the world, the KBs, Lecrae is he's an OG in this space, so he's been killing this for 20 years. So he was very much a pioneer, and now he's bringing people along with him. The Andy Minios, these types of folks. And then you're seeing a whole wave up from the bottom of just artists that we're trying to invite into the festival that we know are they're blowing up maybe in social channels, they're blowing up on internet radio, on podcasts, on underground radio, but now are starting to make the mainstream. And so these are hip hop Christian artists that are being embraced really first by the mainstream.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to me. Like that tells me that there's a uniqueness to that space. And so what we're trying to do, and we've done it this year with a couple bookings that we've done, and we did it last year, and really the last 4 or 5 years, is just trying to introduce it to people, sneaking it in everywhere, main stage, side stages, next gen stages, where for us, it's not like a novelty thing that we found this great artist that's blowing up. And so we've made it a part of our booking strategy of like, what's happening in hip hop, who's relevant and really, killing it right now, getting them into our festival and exposing people who they love hip hop, but they maybe don't know where to find it. And so
Yes.
if it's not on, I won't name the radio stations or the places you can find that stuff, but if it's not in that genre space, they're not finding it. And so we push it to them, and we hear this every year, both from the booking agents later after the event, from the artists, and then from the guests that come, that like Alive has exposed a lot of early hip hop. We were booking Miles before Miles was a thing, and now look at him; he's starting to blow up. And that's fun, especially in a space that I admittedly am not an expert in. But Tyler on my team, he does our bookings. He is an expert. And so he'll come to me with a list of people, and he's just like, Ken, we got to go find these guys, whether they have an agent or not, it doesn't matter. We're just going to get them here. Like this guy's the real deal or whatever. And so we see, I actually think that this is we're still at the beginning of this, that I think there's a whole wave coming because of the creativity. The music is great. So in my opinion, the message is the most important thing. But like when the music's great and the message is great and the artist is a great human, that's special. And we've seen it with some of the leading hip hop artists that they have staying power. But I think what you're seeing now is a whole nother wave of young artists that we may not know their names right now, but give them 4 or 5 years, they're going to be selling out large venues, and their stuff's going to be on mainstream radio even beyond our spaces for Christian music. So I'm excited, if you can't tell, excited about it, because I feel like kind of like rock music was in the 90s, that was where there was a lot of like earthy, organic stuff coming up from the streets. Now that's happening in hip hop. Hip hop is like the new rock and roll in music, where it's like you're just seeing this artistry popping up all over the place.
Yep.
So we got to support it. Like what I would say to anybody that's listening, if you've got the influence, like how do we support that movement? Because I think not only does it get the gospel out, but I think it changes the music industry, where people start to pay attention to this. And I think the sky's the limit in that space. And we want to do anything we can to influence it, because we have ability to influence a lot of people. There's thousands of people that come that they're not in that space. They don't know. And they walk home and now they've saved it in their Spotify list, or they've come to, know your podcast or whatever, or to a mainstream radio station, and they're dialing into this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because that's like, we realized pretty early on, like, part of our mission has to be kind of educating people, right? Because,
Yes.
like you said, it's just not well known. It's kind of like this gem that's hidden under like a mountain, and people just don't know it's there. Like, they might know of Lecrae, and that's because he's been doing it for 20 years, and for the longest, he
Correct.
was the Christian hip hop guy, but now it's expanded and transformed and a lot more like layered and nuanced, and there's different styles of Christian hip hop, and it's like people have no idea just how deep the genre is at this point, how
Oh
big it
yeah.
is, and it's like, yeah, there's a whole process to just introducing people to it, and that's definitely something that we notice and have kind of really tried to do ourselves. But yeah, that's great that people are experiencing it and walking away with a taste for it and just being like, that was amazing.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and there's just so many. I mean, the 1K Fuse of the world, he's blowing up. He's starting to some of his collabs and whatnot. We mentioned Miles already. KB is starting to the traction he's gotten in the last couple of years on some of his stuff, and he's an OG. He's been around forever,
Yep.
but just continues to grow. And Lecrae is just going to be there. He's one of our headliners this year, but he's going to be in that space partially because of his art, but also he's making room for others. And I think the collab thing, that's the other thing that has, I think, really grown the space. Caleb Gordon's a great example of that. He blew up when he hooked up with Forrest Frank and did God Is Good. And, there's a lot of just spaces like that, these collabs and different ways of getting people out into the ether, into the mainstream a little bit more. That the more we can support that, the more we can kind of champion it. It's just gonna, it's gonna help the whole space. And I'm excited about it. I think the sky's the limit on Christian hip hop. And as believers, if you are a believer, the more we can support them by going to their shows, buying their merch, doing the thing to give them space to grow.
Yep.
It's just going to be great for the whole collective of artists.
Agreed, for sure. So, like, for the longest, there's been a lot of pushback on Christian hip hop, right? Particularly from the church, just because a lot of people feel like nothing good can come from an art form that's been perceived as secular, And it's
Yep.
kind of like, well, your issue is with lyrical content, not the art itself.
That's right.
But like, have you guys had any like like, I know you guys would get like the comments online and stuff, but has there been any like major pushback against booking hip hop acts since you guys have been doing it, or?
It's funny. I feel like we get more pushback from the rock bands than we get from hip hop, because I think hip hop has started to enter the mainstream world and been accepted a little bit more recently, which is great for the long term. But we get a lot more pushback because they don't know them. So it's not, we've kind of, it's a good shift, and we see both. You do see people like, oh, how could that be, a godly thing? But on the hip hop front, it's more, it's the unknown art form of it, like people being connected to it that they haven't been exposed to a lot. So they're kind of just like, well, I don't know what this is, so I'm not really gonna, really lean into it. Then they go experience a show. They go and they hear the lyrics. They see how the kids, young people respond to it, and the middle-aged people and the old people too. Like, it's definitely not a young people sport anymore. Like, you see old grandmas out there kind of getting with it as well at live when the hip hop stuff gets going, because it's fun and it's community. So like what happens in the space, when a live show is super fun to watch how everybody gets involved, and it's not a spectator sport where people are back there with their arms folded.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot less of that, honestly, of people pushing back. It's more of they don't know them. Like, so I've never heard of this guy, so like, I don't know if I like him, and then they come and they're like, that was great. So to me, it's like a rinse and repeat thing. I'm very encouraged that it's less about lyric. It's less about them pushing back on the art form and more about their exposure. They just haven't been exposed to it, and you expose them to. I mean, I watched that with Lecrae the last 15 years. It was like early on in his run, he had his niche that he really did well in. Now, at least I'll just speak for Live. Lecrae is one of those, like, he literally plays to everyone from 8 to 80. Like,
Yeah.
everyone digs it. And why? Because they know him and they know what to expect. They know he's going to put on a great show. His music's great. It's fun. And I feel like that's why exposure is the key. Like, people, the more they're exposed to it, the more they see what's out there. And I'm encouraged that it's less judgy on the art form and more just exposure. And the more we do to expose people to it, I just feel like it's going to grow. And the hope is you got like 10 Lecraes in 5-7 years, right? People that just can sell out an arena, can sell out a venue, and people can just go enjoy just what's a great art form and a great evening that they don't have to worry about their kids or their family being exposed to garbage. I mean, that's the fun part. You go to a KB show, you go to a Lecrae show, you go Andy Mineo, you go Miles Minnick, you go to 1K Few. It's Jesus can be right in the middle of that. Like, he's right smack dab in the middle of it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I can't tell you how many times I've had, moms come up to me and say, I am so glad that you guys exist because my kid loves hip-hop, but I hate what they talk about. I hate the lyrics. I don't know what to do with it, but this is a great, outlet for them that I'm going to, put in front of them and try to get them, listening to. And it's like, yeah, it's really incredible just kind of like what that can do for people,
Oh yeah, what you do is really important because I feel like most people operate out of their experience, collective experience, all the things they've experienced in their life, and that's how they operate their life. So the more experiences they have, the more likely they are to be open to a different way of doing, a different way of doing the same thing. And if you want young people specifically, if we're talking about that demographic, because I think we miss the fact that a lot of middle-aged and older folks listen to this music too.
Yep.
It's a huge demographic, but if we're trying to influence the next generation, the best thing we can do is expose them to, well, if you like the beat and you like, just music that's going to encourage you and turn you into a better, not just a better Christian, but a better human, like how else are they going to know if they're not exposed, right? And our job is to be the megaphone and to put it out there. We're the input. What God does with the output's not on us. It's just making it available to people.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of switch gears one more time here. So on like the days of the festival, right? I would imagine there's at least 3,000 fires that you're putting out on a day-to-day basis. So can you just kind of talk about what it looks like behind the scenes during the days of, are people just like running from thing to thing, or, like how do you guys manage everything going on?
Yeah, so everything we do is managed to the minute. So that may shock some people. Maybe it doesn't. But, we have our plan and then life gets in the middle of the plan. So from our perspective, all of the things you see are from the second everybody wakes up in the morning at 6 a.m. to when we shut her down at midnight. Once, everybody kind of goes back to their campsites or goes home. Every minute is kind of planned out. So we've got production people, we've got security and guest services, and everybody kind of lined up to, how the bands come in for their sound checks and when they come in and when the food vendors in the marketplace to open up so people can get fed effectively and reduce as many lines as we can. You've got all the artists, technical difficulties that can come up. And so at any one time, you could have 4 or 5 major things going on. And then if you have weather in the middle of it, or you have a medical emergency, all that kind of throws everything into a little bit of a twitter. So what we like to say is our job and what we try and do for the whole festival is at the front of the curtain, on the front part of the stage. It feels super smooth and everything's kind of running like crazy, but no backstage and what's going on back behind the curtain likely is like the duck on the pond going 100 mile an hour with those little feet. Yeah. Just trying to make sure we can keep all the pieces going. And generally speaking, it works really, really well, but it is like a 5-alarm fire for 3 days of just, lots of things happening, and our job is just to keep it moving and do the best we can to stay, on schedule, keep it fun, safe, enjoyable and make the guest experience the best we can, which is that they're just able to kind of flow throughout the park, and you're communicating well and making it fun. So to do that though, if people are backstage and seeing what was going on back there, it's not always. Sometimes it's super calm, but sometimes there's a lot of chaos to keep the thing going. But at any one time, you could have a couple hundred people backstage, kind of making what's going on in the front of the stage kind of work out, and you're always kind of dealing with that. Last year was just a great example of this. I don't know if you remember, it was called the crowd strike problem that happened at the airports where the airline system went down.
Yeah.
And Andy Mineo we had like 4 or 5 artists that got canceled on their flights and couldn't get. They literally shut down the airspace. About 4 or 5 speakers, and so as you can imagine, you get the call that they're not going to make it, and these are headliners, and it's day of show. There's nothing. What are you going to do about that? And so there's our job is to try and manage that best you can. And you had some, we were able to bring some artists up from other stages to kind of fill some of those slots. So Caleb Gordon came up and saved the day, and Josiah Queen came up from the wood stage to save the day and come on main stage and do a second set. And so you're always kind of maneuvering and adjusting and just trying to do your best to see around a corner. And at the end of the day, you're just hoping that you can make the experience for the guest just next level, no matter what happens, and create as chill an environment as you can.
Yeah, I can tell you as someone who's been on that other side of the curtain, everything does look to run very, very smooth. So kudos on that. It's just interesting after going before we started like doing events versus like after we started doing events. Like I look at like that level of production and productivity, and I'm like, oh man, there's got to be a lot of things going on back there.
Yeah, there's a lot of planning, months and months of planning, and dozens of people, and people don't always get an appreciation when a Lauren Daigle shows up, or a Skillet shows up, or even Lecrae shows up. There's probably 40, 50 people on that team just for that one artist to get all the production loaded in, to get it all loaded up for the front of house people to mix it, and everything to kind of fire, to get that hour-long set to be just next level awesome. It's an army of people, and they're unsung heroes to the whole deal to make it happen. But it makes it fun. I mean, for the festival goer, you just want them to have fun. But for those that are interested, that are listening to this podcast, it's a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of chaos. But we're up for it. It's good.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Yeah, I don't want to hold you much longer, but before we go ahead and wrap up, I do want to just kind of ask you about some of your memories working with Alive, right? So kind of like your best moment, your least favorite moment, funniest moment, those types of things. Just kind of like what sticks out in your brain.
Yeah. Well, I will say the most enjoyable part, there's two. The two most enjoyable parts of Alive every year I've been involved are almost the same it's almost the same every year. That first night, after all a year of planning, and the sun's gone down, the headliner comes out. Last year it was for King and Country on night one. And, it's the last band to go on for the night. So all the chaos of the day one, which is always a little, it's a little rocky in day one. Yeah. To look out from, usually my wife and I start that set from stage because we want to, be there to welcome, them as they enter on the stage. To look out and see a sea of people who've all come together. It's the first night, and you can't even see the back. It just goes so far up the hill, just a sea of people, and you're like, all these people have come together for this joint experience. Everyone's excited. No one's sad. You got a big smile. You can see everybody's faces. They're smiling. They're having a great time, and it's just a sense of like, this is worth it. Like all the work is worth it.
Yeah.
And then right coupled with that is every night when we do the gospel call and you see people coming forward for prayer to either A, start their walk with Jesus, or B, be encouraged to continue to walk with Jesus. And those two things every year are always my favorite. And the text I get at the end of the night from the head of our prayer tent to tell me how many people came forward and a couple stories there. So that probably will never get trumped. That's always the two things that are the most fun. Funny stories, we've had, uh, a lot of funny stories over the years. But usually it's pranks that get pulled. So there's usually a joker someplace in the mix, one of the artists or one of their staff that pulls an epic prank on somebody. Um, you know, all kinds of stuff from, taking people's water and doing funny things with it to building pyramids of, of Coca-Cola cans, in front of people's doors so they can't get in, pushing outhouses. We had one artist who needed to go find a restroom facility, and we lost him for like 15 minutes. Didn't know where he was, and the band just kept playing. And for those of you who are older, you might remember the old movie The Blues Brothers, where the Blues Brothers never showed up. They couldn't show up to the gig because they were kind of detained, and the band just kept playing, waiting for him to come. And they're just looking around like, when's this guy gonna come in? So this artist was lost somewhere in the park trying to find a restroom, and the band just kept playing, and we're just like spinning plates over there trying to figure out like, okay, what are we gonna do? And that was kind of funny. We've had that happen several times where you got 20, 30 artists rolling in and out, and sometimes goofy things happen. An outhouse got knocked over once by a golf cart, somebody buzzing around too much, and just you have all kinds of funny things that happen. What's never fun is the weather. So that's the part as a festival owner you get super worked up about is, rain can bring some negativity to it. So probably the most frustrating thing in 2023, it was our last day. It was Saturday, and we were able to fight through it, but we kept getting rainstorms rolling in, and it just slowed everything down. It just sucks the vibe out a little bit until we were able to kind of bring a comedian out. So we brought Shama, who's a comedian you might know from.
What a guy!
Oh, dude, that guy's hilarious. And we just said, Shama, the vibe is low. It's 2 hours of rain. Here's a microphone. You and Christian McCartney, two comedians, why don't you go out there and just do a set? I don't care what you do. Make people laugh. So they ran out there on the thrust at the end of the stage with no plan, and they just started just cracking jokes and making fun of people and doing stuff, and it just rose the whole crowd. This rain passed by, and I think Blessing Offer came out right after that and kicked off the rest of the evening, and it kind of just went up from there. So it was both a negative and a positive. We had this kind of negative vibe of like people were irritated. It was raining all day, and then just get somebody to go out there do their thing, and Shama blew it up and made it super fun.
Yeah, I remember that day because No Big Deal was on the beach stage, and he was
That's
the last
right.
act. And I remember the rain kind of pushing that back a little bit, and I actually got to talk with Shama because he was there a little bit. Didn't really know much of him at that time, but then I went to his Instagram, and I was like, this dude is something else.
Yeah, if you don't know Shama, go to your Instagram when this is over, and the real Shama, go see him. He will make you cry. He's really good friends with John Christ. He toured with him several times. He did this whole thing on visiting churches. I don't know if you've ever seen his little bit where they go visit different kinds of churches, and kind of like do a critique of the funny things that they saw, and it's just next level. Good entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. But cool. Well, all right, Ken, do you have anything else you want to leave the people with before we log off?
No, really appreciate a couple of things here, but just really appreciate the opportunity to come chat. And this is just hopefully a great, meandering conversation about what we do at Alive, but really appreciate what you guys do and what you specifically bring, to the community. And I just, can't say enough about how much we appreciate the efforts that you put forth and to really just be a voice in this space. On our side, just want to invite anybody out that's never been a part to come out to Alive this year. It's July 17th through the 19th at Atwood Lake Park. You can find all the information at alive.org. But Thursday night we've got Crowder and Wilson and Gable Price and friends. Geo is on that stage as well. Friday night Chris Tomlin. Chris Renzema, KB's out that evening as well, I believe. Franny Cash from We the Kingdom is doing her first major show as a solo artist that night. Lecrae, Switchfoot on Saturday with Corey Asbury and Tasha Layton and a bunch of others. and then a whole bunch of folks at the Next Gen Village. But if you go out to alive.org, you can get your tickets. You can come for a single day. You can come for all 3 days. But yeah, just welcome you into the crew if you haven't been, and really, really appreciate the opportunity to come talk about it today, and really appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you again for, coming on to this episode and having this conversation with us. And for everyone listening, I give not that it really matters much, but I give my full endorsement to the Alive Festival. If you're on the fence about it, just take my word and go. You will not regret it at all. It is an amazing time. It's a great time with great food, great music, great people. There's a lake you can go swim and, let your kids run wild. But overall,
that's right.
It's a great atmosphere.
And that's probably a good thing to point out too, is it's more than just the music. That if you've never been to Outwood and you're an outdoor person or you like to be outdoors, like, you're exactly right. I mean, there's just so many things you could do. If you're there for the 3 days and you're camping, the lake is awesome. You can hike, you can, do lots of outdoor type stuff. And the food is next level. I usually gain a pound or two from all the food trucks.
Yeah.
So you can't go wrong, man.
Truck.
Oh, that barbecue truck, yeah.
Yeah.
Uncle Bacon's. If you're listening,
Yes.
Uncle Bacon, there's these bacon pork sliders that were almost the death of me last year. But there's just a lot of really great food, a lot of great people, and it's a great experience. And the music is just the plus on top,
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you again, Ken, for joining us today, and thank you to all of our listeners. Again, make sure you guys go ahead and check out the Alive Festival this year, the year after that. I'm Gio with Glory in the Beat, and we appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Beat. Glory, glory, glory. In the beat, in the beat, in the beat, in the beat, in the beat. Locked in with the great I am. Pressure, I'm a man of man. Sliding foes like Jerusalem. These airways where his presence lives. Glory, glory where the king lives. Catch the spark and ignite the kids. 808s, drilling messages. We the generation that'll praise the Lamb. Jesus, God came for me.